Welcome to Season 4, Episode 1 of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Today we're dealing with Unresolved Silence, an in-depth analysis of Ontario's unsolved homicides. Part 1, the introduction, the enduring challenge of unsolved homicides in Ontario. Part A, defining a cold case, the perpetual pursuit of justice. The investigation of a homicide is a complex and often protracted process. For law enforcement agencies in Ontario, a case is not considered fully resolved till a verdict is being rendered in court. This principle is fundamental to the work of dedicated cold case units, as it defines the perpetual nature of the pursuit for justice. The Toronto Police Service, TPS for example, maintains a remarkable homicide clearance rate that has averaged close to 80% since 1921. Despite this statistical success, the remaining 20% of cases, murders that lack a perpetrator who has been identified, charged, or convicted, represents a significant and enduring challenge. The cold case section of the Homicide Missing Persons Unit exists specifically to address these unsolved files, recognizing that behind the statistics are families and communities who continue to seek answers and resolution. The re-examination of old evidence is a cornerstone of modern cold case investigation. Since 1996, advancements in scientific methods, particularly in forensic science, have opened up new avenues for investigators to revisit and potentially solve cases that were once thought to be unsolvable. The passage of time does not diminish the grief of the victims' families, who hold on to the hope that a perpetrator will one day be identified and arrested. This unwavering commitment to justice is a central motivating factor for police services across the province. They encourage the public to come forward with any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, as even a minor detail can be the key to a breakthrough. Part B, a high-level overview, mapping the unsolved in Canada's most populous province. Unsolved homicides in Ontario are not confined to a single geographic area. A comprehensive review of publicly available data reveals a broad and diverse landscape of unsolved crimes that span decades and locations. While major urban centers such as Toronto and Ottawa have well-publicized cases, regional and rural communities are also grappling with long-standing mysteries. The Toronto Police Service, the York Regional Police, Peterborough Police Service, and the Guelph Police Service, among others, each maintain their own lists and investigative teams dedicated to resolving these files. Part 2, the urban landscape, unsolved cases of the Greater Toronto Area. Part A, Toronto Police Service, Homicide Squad, and Cold Case Section. The Toronto Police Service Homicide Missing Persons Unit has a dedicated cold case section that focuses on bringing a resolution to cases that have been stalled. The team's mission is to work closely with the families of victims and to ensure that a case is never closed until a court verdict has been reached. The success of this section is directly linked to its ability to leverage new investigative techniques and re-examine old evidence with modern scientific methods. The TPS website maintains a list of cold cases, which includes the murders of Peggy Smith in 2016, John Ignani in 2016, Ariella Navarro Fenoy in 2015, and Duvel Hebert in 2015. Among others, serving as a public record of ongoing investigations where no arrest has been made. Part B, York Regional Police, a chronology of unsolved murders. York Regional Police maintains a comprehensive chronological list of unsolved murders and disappearances in their jurisdiction, providing a striking visual of the long-term nature of these investigations. The list dates back to the 1950s, highlighting cases from every decade since, including those of William Nash in 1956, William Joseph Pennell in 1980, and Joseph Naw in 2003, showcasing a timeline of unsolved files that span over half a century. A particularly compelling case from this list is that of Wendy Renee Smith, a 33-year-old exotic dancer, disappeared on April 13, 1995, on her way to her first shift at a new job. Police believe she was murdered, but for nearly 3 decades, her case has remained a cold, silent mystery. The investigation revealed multiple unsettling leads, including 2 unidentified suspects who failed polygraph tests. The case also garnered public attention due to an unconfirmed but widely discussed theory of a possible connection to one of Canada's most infamous serial killers, Robert Pickton. The details surrounding the case of Wendy Smith underscore the complex and often frustrating nature of cold case investigations, where a multitude of clues can lead to dead ends and unanswered questions, leaving her family shattered. Part C. Notorious Toronto Cases: The Convergence of Public Interest and Police Investigation. Toronto has been the site of several high-profile unsolved murders that have captured national attention. The 2017 deaths of billionaire pharmaceutical magnate Barry Sherman and his wife Honey Sherman remain one of Canada's most perplexing mysteries. Initially classified as a murder-suicide, the case was later reclassified as an unsolved homicide, and it continues to be the subject of widespread speculation and investigation. This case illustrates that even with vast resources and intense media scrutiny, the truth behind a crime can remain elusive. Another deeply unsettling chapter in Toronto's history is a series of disappearances from the Church and Wellesley neighborhood, the city's LGBTQ+ village, between 2010 and 2017. Disappearances of men such as Skandaraj Skanda Navarathnam, Abdulbasar Basir Fazi, and Majid Hamid Kayan led to police task forces like Project Houston. Initially, police had difficulty linking the disappearances and concluding their investigation with no evidence to suggest a crime had been committed. Community fears of a serial killer were palpable, but the Toronto Police Service Chief, Mark Saunders, publicly stated that there was no evidence of such a threat. This period of uncertainty created a profound schism between the LGBTQ+ community, which felt it was being targeted, and law enforcement. The eventual arrest and conviction of Bruce McArthur demonstrated the validity of the community's fears, but the initial lack of official acknowledgement created a complex and challenging environment for the investigation. This case highlights a critical dynamic in criminal investigations. The high evidentiary standard required for a formal police declaration of a serial killer can sometimes conflict with the community's need for transparency and safety warnings. This conflict can turn in affect the public's willingness to provide information, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of distrust and hindering the investigative process. Part 3. A focus on specific cases. Detailed profiles from across Ontario. Part A. The Gerald Durocher case in Peterborough. The triumph of forensic genetic genealogy. The case of Gerald Durocher, the Otonabee River Man, is a powerful narrative of how modern science can provide resolution to a decades-old mystery. On July 10, 1988, recreational divers discovered a human skull in the Otonabee River in Peterborough. Post-mortem examination confirmed he was a male homicide victim, but his identity remained unknown for over 30 years. In October 2021, the Peterborough Police Service submitted evidence to the Ontario Forensic Pathology Service and a lab in Texas, the hope that advanced DNA testing, forensic genetic genealogy, or FGG, could generate new leads. Scientists use forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive DNA profile. The genealogy team then utilized this profile to identify potential relatives by searching public genealogical databases. This new information allowed investigators to locate and interview these individuals, and subsequent confirmatory DNA testing led to the positive identification of the victim as Gerald Durocher, a 38-year-old man with connections throughout Ontario and British Columbia. This case exemplifies the transformative power of FGG It demonstrates a clear and direct causal relationship. A decades-old piece of evidence, combined with cutting-edge technology and interagency collaboration, can directly lead to a breakthrough in a seemingly dead-end case. The ability to finally identify victims and their family members years later provides fresh investigative avenues and revitalized leads in the search for their killers. Part B. The Gus Fortunes case in Guelph, the challenge of the Code of Silence. 2005 murder of Gus Fortunes in Guelph remains one of the city's oldest unsolved homicides. 40-year-old father of two was fatally stabbed in the chest on August 25, 2005, and died in the hospital a short time later. Despite investigators interviewing and re-interviewing more than 100 people, no one has ever been charged. The central challenge in this investigation, stated by Detective Constable Scott Beiser, is a code of silence. Authorities believe that individuals within the city's drug subculture, which Fortunes was involved, know who is responsible, but being afraid to come forward. This case provides a powerful illustration of sociological barriers to solving crime. It demonstrates a direct causal relationship between community fear, a refusal to cooperate, law enforcement, and a prolonged unsolved homicide. The public appeal issued by the Guelph Police Service, 20 years after the murder, along with a generous $5,000 reward from Crime Stoppers, are explicit strategies designed to break this silence and provide an incentive for witnesses to come forward. This highlights that human factors, such as fear and community trust, can be just as significant to an investigation as forensic evidence. Part C. Tragic case of Lynn Harper and Stephen Truscott in Clinton, a historical retrospective. The 1959 murder of 12-year-old Lynn Harper near an Air Force base in Clinton, Ontario, is a landmark case in Canadian legal history. Her classmate, 14-year-old Stephen Truscott, was the last person to see her alive and was subsequently convicted and sentenced to death for her rape and murder. His sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment, and he was eventually released on parole in 1969. The case was propelled back into the public consciousness by a book and a CBC documentary, which questioned the hasty nature of the investigation and trial. Decades later, in 2007, Truscott's conviction was finally overturned by the Ontario Court of Appeal. The exoneration was based on the fact that key forensic evidence, particularly the use of stomach contents to determine the time of the death, was found to be unreliable and weaker than portrayed at the original trial. The Court of Appeal concluded that there was a reasonable doubt about the time of death, which could have meant Truscott was not the killer. The Truscott case is a foundational narrative that illustrates the fallibility of early forensic science and the potential for a miscarriage of justice when evidence is not meticulously scrutinized. It serves as a powerful historical counterpoint to the successes of modern DNA technology and underscores why today's cold case units must rely on the most robust and verifiable scientific methods available. Part D. The Nation River Lady Case. Layla Jewel Parchman Langford. A modern resolution. Like the Durocher case, the resolution of the Nation River Lady case provides a compelling example of new frontiers in cold case investigations. For 48 years, the body of a woman found in the Nation River in 1975 remained unidentified, known only by the nickname given to her by the community. The case stalled despite earlier attempts by the Ontario Provincial Police to identify her with a 3D facial approximation. In 2019, new DNA was obtained from the victim's remains and sent to a lab in California. The OPP collaborated with the DNA Doe Project, a nonprofit organization that uses FGG to identify victims in cold cases. The organization uploaded the DNA profile to public genealogy databases, and within a few weeks, their volunteer team identified the woman as Layla Jewel Parchman Langford, a business owner from Jackson, Tennessee, who had disappeared while on a trip to Montreal in April 1975. The positive identification was confirmed through DNA comparison with their surviving relatives. The breakthrough led to the charging of an 81-year-old man from Florida with her murder. This case demonstrates a powerful causal chain. A cold case plus interagency collaboration between the OPP, in this case the DNA Doe Project, plus modern science equals resolution. The fact that the suspect was located and charged in another country also highlights the increasingly international nature of criminal investigations and the ability of modern tools to transcend jurisdictional boundaries. Part 4. Modern Tools and Techniques. The Evolution of Cold Case Investigations. Part A. Forensic Genetic Genealogy, FGG, a new frontier in solving the unsolvable. Forensic genetic genealogy represents a paradigm shift in cold case investigations. This technique goes beyond traditional DNA analysis, which relies on matching a suspect's DNA to a sample in a criminal database. Instead, FGG uses degraded or limited DNA evidence to create a comprehensive genetic profile. This profile is then uploaded to public open-source genealogical databases, where search for familial matches. If a match is found, professional genealogists or investigators can begin building family trees, tracing lineages, and interviewing relatives to narrow down the potential suspect pool and generate new, actionable leads. The successful identification of Gerald Durocher and Layla Jewel Parchman Langford are two primary examples of this technology in action, showing how a method, once limited to identify missing persons, can now be a cornerstone of homicide investigations. The broader implication is that a vast number of historical cold cases, particularly those involving unidentified victims, are now potentially solvable through this methodology. Part B. The indispensable role of the public. Despite the advent of high-tech forensic tools, police agencies consistently emphasize the indispensable role of the public in solving cold cases. Law enforcement sources reiterate that it often takes only one small piece of information to solve an unsolved homicide and bring closure to a family. The information provided by a witness, no matter how minor it may seem, can now be cross-referenced with modern forensic evidence. A witness tip about a specific vehicle or location, for instance, could be linked to a DNA sample found at the scene, which could then be used for FGG to narrow down a suspect. This fusion of old and new investigative methods underscores the need for continued public engagement. The information can't be provided anonymously through Crime Stoppers, which offers a secure way for individuals to come forward without fear of reprisal. Part C. The Police Reward Programs. As a tangible incentive for public cooperation, Maine Police Services in Ontario offer cash rewards for information that leads to an arrest and prosecution. These programs are a direct financial strategy to overcome the conduct of silence in complaint investigations, seen as the Gus Fortunes case. The Ottawa Police Service, for example, offers rewards up to $75,000 Canadian for information on specific unsolved files. Part 5. The Human Element. Grief, Advocacy, and the Pursuit of Closure. Part A. The Unwavering Commitment of Families. Unsolved homicides inflict a unique and profound form of grief on victims' families, who are left without the closure of knowing what happened to their loved one, seeing the perpetrator held accountable. Law enforcement agencies recognize this deep pain and make it a priority to work closely with the families, emphasizing that their commitment to the case is ongoing. The families of victims often become tireless advocates, keeping the memory of their loved ones alive and engaging with media and police to ensure their case is not forgotten. Part B. Public Appeals and Media Engagement. The relationship between police agencies, the media, and the public is vital to cold case investigations. Police services frequently issue public pleas for information, often through news stories or dedicated websites, as a way to generate new leads and keep the case in the public eye. This process is now frequently complemented by true crime media, such as this podcast, which delve into the intricate details of unsolved cases. These platforms serve not only to inform the public, but also to amplify the appeals made by law enforcement, ensuring that victims' stories, like those of Donna Alcock, continue to be remembered and discussed by a wider audience. The symbiotic relationship ensures the families are not forgotten, that the potential for a new tip from someone who remembers a seemingly insignificant detail is always present. In conclusion, the unwavering pursuit of justice. The landscape of unsolved murders and disappearances in Ontario is a complex and evolving one, defined by historical mysteries, the tragic impact on victims' families, and the constant evolution of investigative science. While the vast majority of homicides in the province are solved, the minority that remains unsolved represents a powerful and ongoing challenge to law enforcement. These cases demonstrate that while progress has been made, particularly with the advent of forensic genetic genealogy, sociological factors like a code of silence and the passage of time can still create formidable barriers to resolution. The pathway to justice for these victims lies in a fusion of old and new methods. It requires the diligent, compassionate work of cold case units who are committed to a case until it is formally closed, coupled with the application of cutting-edge technology that can re-examine decades-old evidence. Most importantly, it relies on the continued cooperation of the public. Every piece of information, no matter how small, has the potential to be the catalyst for a breakthrough, providing the final piece of the puzzle that brings a perpetrator to justice and offers a long-awaited sense of peace to a grieving family. For anyone who may have information about an unsolved homicide, whether from last year or decades ago, the various police services throughout the province and anonymous tip lines, like Crime Stoppers, remain a critical avenue for coming forward and helping to solve a case. Because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice. Subscribe now to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Episodes available wherever you get your podcasts.